All right, welcome to this Satellite Digital Media Sports Talk edition. I'm Brian Professor B. Davis here at the Satellite Digital Media Studios here in the city of the Bay in San Francisco. Professor B here. We're going to talk with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton on this as we flip the calendar now to September 1st, the first day of September, and it has been a busy, busy week. We've had college. It's kind of like the new Armageddon, the new world order of college football. Conferences are shifting. The biggest surprise, the two Bay Area rivals, Cal and Stanford, is going to be in the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, coming up in a couple years' time. It's been a busy sports time, Lee, for college sports.
Brian, good to be with you. Yeah, we're going to go a lot of different areas in the next 15 minutes to talk about. I guess we can start with college football as they kick this thing off and everybody plays on Saturday, Brian. I think that the words that probably perfectly fit this is an end of an era as we've known college football. It obviously is the death
In college
knell to what
sports.
was the Pac
Yep.
12 conference. We got all these other schools bidding farewell to their conferences, going to new conferences, effective with the 2024-25 season.
Mm,
I think it's bad for college football. I'm
yep.
so upset at the fact that USC and UCLA did what they did. They turned their back on the
Disappointing.
legacy and the history of everything that the Pac
Mm-hmm.
12, Pac 10, Pac 8 was dating back to 1915. And because of the
Yep.
Trojans and the Bruins, that forced the hand of Oregon and Washington. Then the dominoes started to fall with all the corner schools winding up going to the Big 12. And then just what happened in the early hours today, which makes no sense to me. Cal and Stanford and SMU going to the other end of the country to, quote, have a relationship with the Atlantic Coast Conference. So to me, it's the end of an era. I think it's very, very sad.
It's
And I'll tell
horrible.
you, 5 years from today, Professor, if we're still doing this, 5 years from today, I think the TV contracts will blow up in the face of everybody because I
Mm.
firmly believe in 5 years, Fox and CBS and NBC and Amazon, all these guys are going to come
ESPN.
back and they're going to tell these conferences, we're not going to guarantee you 50 million per school. We're not going to give Vanderbilt 50 million. We're not going to give Rutgers 50 million. Form a super conference with the top 25 teams. We'll do TV contracts with the rest of the conferences, but we're not paying everybody 50 because you don't deserve 50 if you're Vanderbilt and Rutgers. I
And
think
somebody
five
just
years from today, I think
right,
that's where we're
right.
going to wind up. That's a
That's
long answer to your question.
I
I
know.
do think this is the end of the era, sadly, for how we've known college football.
Yeah, it's good because someone just wrote on my Facebook post says I'm done with college football, and I think today was kind of uh, like Black Friday of college football. The day of infamy, you could say. World War II was a day of infamy in 1941, or the Vietnam. I mean, this was the ultimate, and you know, it's just they have fallen, and I think it may not. I will say this about college baseball: me being a long time, I've covered two teams, University of San Francisco and the St. Mary's Gales for 1 year last year. They're both resides in the West Coast Conference, but me being a lifer in the Bay Area, Stanford Cardinals does have some history with University of Miami and Florida State in college baseball. They've met numerous times in the postseason, and I could look back at the 1999 College World Series where Stanford needed to win one of two against Florida State to reach the championship final against Miami Hurricanes, and then they blew a 6-2 lead. Uh, Florida State came back to score six unanswered runs, and I think in three of the final four innings to win that game to stay alive. Then they had to beat Stanford again in the extra game. The winner of that game take on Miami for the championship national title game, which back in those days it was one game for all the marbles, and then Florida State won the walk off 14-11 in extra innings before they end up losing to their rival Miami in the championship final with their legendary head coach Jim Morris at the helm at the University of Miami. It's kind of like the sad finality where it's like the deathbed or a patient being in terminal ill before that finality. That's just a sad day.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I blame the presidents of the Pac 12 for what has happened to this conference. the fact that in the middle of the night, USC and UCLA did these deals, and the president's council, they are
Yep.
supposed to work together for the
Yep.
benefit of all the members in the conference. And for SC and UCLA, and I know it was 50 million to go, but for them to do this and not alert these other conference members what was going to happen, this is terrible. And then you go from that decision to leave, then obviously the proposal that had been made by the Big 12 to merge with the Pac 12 and or Pac 10 and form a superpower 20 team conference, that was voted down by the Pac 12 presidents. And then there was an idea, we'll just steal Oklahoma and Texas, but they wanted different money. And the Pac 12 said, no, we're not going to do that. And then they turned down 30 million per team on an extension for ESPN for the 10 remaining schools. And then obviously the money started to go away. And then Apple TV put up an offer that was
Mm.
kind of weird. The Pac 12 presidents in the Ivy Tower, they're to blame for the shame of
Yep.
what has happened, this funeral. And I feel bad. I got friends at Oregon State, Washington State. I can't believe how hard it must be emotionally in Corvallis and Pullman because they're the only two left behind. And where are they going to go? Maybe to the Mountain West Conference. So,
I think so
end of
too.
the day, it's a terrible, terrible story
Mm.
in college football.
It's like I think in baseball because they break up those natural rivals. You think of in perspective, USC, UCLA, college football. You think of for USC, Mike Garrett, O.J. Simpson, Anthony Davis, running backs. The late Charles White, Marcus Allen, to Bruce Matthews, Ronnie Lott, uh, and then for UCLA, the dynasties they had from the mid late '60s to the early mid '70s with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then known as Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, the legendary, the Wizard, John Wooden. Um, I
The
it,
end of the day, how can you turn your back on the history and the legacy? And that's the point I said, kicking off our quick interview here is how do you turn your back on college rivalries that have made the sport for generations upon generations? So
Apple
it's
Cup.
terrible.
Yeah,
Okay, let's move from that. Let's talk to the next topic. What do you want to put on the table there?
we're gonna do NFL football, then baseball. I'm gonna save baseball for last. NFL season. Look at the NFC of the NFC, the West, and that conference. The 49ers. A lot of people say that they are the team to beat. Probably them in Philadelphia. The NFC is anyone's taking. How you like the NFC in quick time and a 2-minute offense of all the divisions in the NFC before we do the AFC.
Nice lid you got on there. Uh,
Thank
I'll tell you
you.
what, AFC, NFC is going to be fun. Obviously, Philadelphia took the giant step forward last year. San Francisco, I think, is knocking at the door. That being said, they have to find a way to solve this issue with Nick Bosa. In the
Yep.
AFC, it's Kansas City's trophy till somebody takes it away.
Yep.
Kansas City has got a big problem with the holdout and the threats made by their defensive tackle, Chris Jones. In the AFC, you got the Chargers who think they are built now to knock Kansas City off the throne because they think their offense is everything because of Justin Herbert and the skill guys and the offensive linemen. They think the Chargers offense is equal to what Kansas City's offense is. Now, there's some other really good teams out there. Injuries are going to play a role in the outcome of all this, but the contract disputes in Frisco and obviously what's gone on in Kansas City have to be solved. And I saw something this morning. It's the first time I've seen this. Normally, players, Brian, don't get involved in other players' contract issues. And
Right.
Travis Kelsey popped off, and Travis Kelsey went public and said, "We need you to be here," to Chris Jones, and you need to be here because you owe us a year on your contract. So that's a really, really big issue where suddenly now players are sounding off. And of course, in the Bay Area with San Francisco, they got to solve this Nick Bosa thing because they're not quite the same defense if that big sack artist is not there on the field. I think cooler heads should prevail. I think they'll get here. But if they start missing regular season games, that impacts the
That's
ability
dangerous, very
of the Niners
dangerous,
and Chiefs to
extremely
do their business.
dangerous.
Yep.
And then I think Fred Dean that one year in '84. This was way before the money. The late Fred Dean sat out for like 3 months and he didn't
Yep.
come back till that stretch drive. But the Niners, that team went 15-1, and they were able to. They had so much depth, so it wasn't as bad that people think. But you know the Niners, everybody's circling that pencil when they play the Eagles in early December because the Niners will play the Seahawks on Thanksgiving night up in Seattle. And this is hopefully an IOU from what happened 9 years ago at Levi Stadium when the Seahawks did that to the Niners on Thanksgiving night, and then they'll play the Eagles on December 4th. Then they'll play the Seahawks again within that 2 week range. It's going to determine a lot of the fate where the Niners position. I still say the Niners are going to that game in December is going to determine home field advantage. AFC, I like either Cincinnati or Buffalo to come out of there to represent either one of those two teams to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Well, I think Buffalo has gotten to the brink. Now they have to prove they can actually step across the line, win playoff games, and play the first week of February. They're really close. They're really good. I like everything that they have done in terms of stockpiling talent in Buffalo. Cincinnati, I'm iffy because Joe Burrow has made them a good franchise, but if you can't protect him and if he gets hurt again,
Mm-hmm.
then Cincinnati kind of drifts back to mediocrity. And Cincinnati has yet to sign him to this massive contract extension. And if the state-of-the-art quarterbacks are getting 50 million per year, then he deserves 52 million because his resume includes AFC championship games and having taken the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Problem is, the Brown ownership, historically cheap. You
Yep.
can't screw with Joe
No,
Burrow.
no,
He
no.
is outplayed the contract. He deserves what all the other guys are getting. Justin Herbert with the Chargers, he outplayed his contract. He just got 50, and he's never won a playoff game. And yet,
Right.
you look at what Joe Burrow's done in Cincinnati, you compare that to what Mahomes has done. So those other teams are really good. I do buy your theory. Buffalo, I think they're right there, but they need to step across that line and play deeper into January so they can get the chance to play the first week of February.
I'm still looking for my Chris Berman Super Bowl. I've been waiting since I was 14. Niners and Bills. I've been waiting for that forever. And they it's in a perspective, about 6 of those 7 years between 88 through 94, either the 49ers or the Bills had played in the respective conference championship games, I believe 6 straight years. One of those teams advanced to the Super Bowl, the others did not. 2 of those 6 times, or 3 of those 6 times, involved the 49ers losing in the NFC Championship after winning back-to-back Super Bowls. They lost a heartbreaker to the Giants on that last-second field goal by Matt Barr, where Joe Montana got knocked out by Leonard Marshall in the 1990 NFC Championship game. I was 14 years old. I almost cried after that game. And then losing twice to Dallas in the NFC title game in 92 and 93. All 3 of those times, 3 of those 4 years that Buffalo did go to the Super Bowl, or the Niners lost, and the Buffalo Bills, of course, went 4 straight years, only to see their tragic fate when they lost in the Super Bowl as well. But let's try to flip the page to Major League Baseball. Here in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Giants winning a big ball game last night as we're doing this taping, 7-2 to the free falling Padres. They've lost, I think, 5 out of 6 and 19 out of their last 24. And looking at the standings right now in the wild card, the Giants, I said it, the Giants have to take at least either sweep or take at least 3 or 4 from the Friars. The Padres are right now 8.5 games back, and they're in dire straits, desperately need to try to on life support, because if they get swept 4 straight or lose at least 3 or 4, they're buried.
Well, I cover baseball extensively on my website. I write about it. I do it on my own podcast. I think this is the worst season in Padre history. And we had a lot of 100-loss seasons early. One year they lost 110 games. We nearly lost the franchise. We've had a couple of years more recently where they've just fallen out of the race when it looked like they were prepared to jump through the hoop. And they have spent an unbelievable amount of money, $253 million payroll. The problem is they have real team chemistry issues. A.J. Preller has signed an absolute ton of talent, and it hasn't mixed. I think there's a terrible chemistry problem, clubhouse, dugout. I think there's terrible interference from up top with A.J. Preller and the manager, Bob Melvin. And the problem that the Padres have put themselves in now is they can't trade any of these contracts.
Oh,
Nobody will
nope,
trade for the
nope.
amount of contract that Machado's got, Soto's got with impending free agency. what Bogart's got, what Tatis got. You can't trade those guys because
Nope.
nobody wants 10 or 11 or 14-year contracts for a pile of players that are going to be 30 years or older. That's a big issue. I've also got an issue in when they traded for Soto and they traded for Blake Snell. They had to know they were also trading for the super agent Scott Boras. And this becomes a real problem because he's going to ask state of the art money, regardless of what those guys have done statistically. The Padres are just a mess. And up the road, I mean, you may disagree with me on this, Bride. That's okay. I'm glad to argue with you.
No
But up
worries.
the
I'm.
road, up the road, we thought the Dodgers were just kind of hitting the reset button because they wanted to get below the luxury tax, so the Dodgers could be a player for Shohei Ohtani when he becomes a free agent out of Anaheim. And the Dodgers are in first place. Dodgers have been unbelievable. For example, in the month of August, I think their record was 24-5. So I mean, the Dodgers have just been it's been a stunning success
Yep.
to them, and this is with all the injuries they've had in their pitching staff. But thank goodness for them, they've had 6 young starters that have come out of Oklahoma City and have given them some quality starts along the way. So it's been a really bad baseball season in San Diego. It's been a fascinating season in Los Angeles, and it's really been a terrible season in Anaheim with the demise of the Angels and possibly the impending loss of Shohei Ohtani to free agency. And there's a lot of angst and anger in Orange County. And I've
Oh,
written and I've told people what we need to do is we need to hold Artie Moreno, the owner, responsible because he's impulsive. He's made some good moves. He's tried really hard. He's wasted a lot of money. He's made some bad moves because he's been so impulsive. But let's not criticize Ohtani. That was a once in a lifetime player. We should say thank you to Showtime that he came here and played for 5 or 6 years for the Halos and wouldn't come out of the lineup. But at the same time, you had your run. He's probably going to defect. He's probably going to leave. Maybe it's Dodger Stadium. Maybe it's San Francisco. Maybe it's Seattle, where they had a great history with
Japanese
three
players.
players led by Ichiro Suzuki. So, I mean, off season will be fascinating to see in baseball. But what a weird year, at least down here in Southern California. You're dealing with a mess that is and the disgrace that is the Oakland Athletics, and obviously
Oh my gosh,
the
it's
patchwork quilt that the
heartbreakingly
San Francisco Giants
very
are trying
heartbreaking.
to drag themselves
Very
back
heartbreaking. I feel
into
for
the
those A's
playoffs.
fans. I feel bad for those A's fans. I mean, I even support the A's in the late '80s when they were just. I remember as a kid, and even in the early '90s with Tony La Russa and the Bash Brothers and Dave Stewart and Ricky Henderson, they would pack them in midweek. They would pack that joint close towards a sellout when the Twins or the Royals, when Bo Jackson or Kirby Puckett was in town. They would pack that place in. They had that run for 5 years from '88 to '92. Three of those times they went to the World Series, and they beat the Giants in the Earthquake Series in '89. I just feel for those A's fans. I hope they're looking for a Hail Mary miracle or something because it's just bad. And the guy, I that guy, their owner is just Fisher is not a good owner, good business. He's just there to profit, and
Well,
he's
I'm
just a
friends with Mark Kotsay, and I feel really
right.
terrible that he's been put in such a deplorable situation. And this is a combination of that ownership being allowed to do what John Fisher has done by Major League Baseball and by the Players Association. I know they never got financing put in place for a stadium in Oakland. Oakland is a troubled community. But
Yep.
there's no reason with the profits that MLB, Brian, is making that they can't be a partner with these cities and these teams. Look at what the NFL has done with the quote G3 fund to help finance stadiums. Major League Baseball could do this. Not that they would pay for the stadium, but they would float loans that would help finance it as long as John Fisher of the world's would put his own money in with that, with the community money. That's why the NFL has been able to build all these new stadiums. Baseball has never gotten there. And the unions allowed this to go on. There should be, in all honesty, this is another topic for another
Right.
time, Brian. But the one thing that has to happen, we have the luxury tax in baseball. We need a floor to spending. That
Yeah.
if you're in Baltimore or you're in Oakland or you're in Pittsburgh or whatever, if you're taking revenue share money, Brian, you've got to pour it back into the payroll. There
Exactly.
has to
Big.
be a floor to spending. I
Amen.
don't know what that
Amen.
figure is. Maybe it's 120 million. You should, because they're taking revenue share. You should not be allowed to have Tampa Bay have a 53 million payroll or Oakland have a 43 million payroll if you take in revenue share. And the union refuses to do that. And I have a huge problem. I'm friends with Tony Clark. I just have a huge problem with what they've allowed this Oakland situation to become.
Yeah, because I covered St. Mary's Girls baseball in Moraga. I take the BART commute over there when I go through Oakland. It's like a third. It's very sadly very
Yeah.
sad
Okay.
that
Good.
and I remember very well. You know, just a sad situation over there for the people. Over at the that's just I hope there be a miracle that they could salvage this thing and get some better owners because the A's are a proud tradition. They were the first Bay Area team to win a World Series. The A's, and before I was born, 72, 73, 74. I grew up with watching the A's, even the late '80s when they had that run with La Russa, they with McGuire and Canseco, Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, and outside of the Charlie Finley, I think the best ownership group outside of Finley was the Haas family. They put in the resources and they put a good product out there. I remember when they used to kick the Yankees' butt every time when the Yankees were losing when they was in the late '80s. Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield, they 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 put a good product out there in Oakland, and like I said, they used to pack the joint at the Coliseum, and it's just and then they came back to being relevant with Billy Bean and Moneyball. Fortunately, they never got to get to the World Series, but
Well, I think the weirdest part of the equation in the history of baseball, the Athletics have had the most money ownership problems of anything I've known. Now, this goes back before you and me, but they were the Philadelphia Athletics, and they were
right,
really good. And Connie Mack owned them, and he had to break that team up twice. They had no money, and they went to Kansas City, and Charlie Finley bought it, and then they moved it to Oakland, and they had great runs with Reggie Barr and all those guys. And then Bry, he tried to break that up, and he had to make a lot of changes financially too. And now you got this scenario where they tried really hard and they got bad ownership and bad money. I don't know what they're going to do in the next 3 years interim. I don't think the Giants want them co-sharing a stadium.
no.
I don't know how they could legitimately go back and play in the Oakland Coliseum for the 3 more years while the new stadium is built in Vegas. I think it's absurd to think in the heat and humidity to play in an open air
Ew.
stadium in
Ew.
Las Vegas. And one
Hmm.
of the proposals being floated, make it a touring team. Let them go play series, a homestand in Portland and a homestand in Memphis and a homestand in Charlotte. The union's going to raise holy hell saying, no, you're not playing, put my players and their families on the road for a whole calendar year or 3 years. So this has just got so many problems attached to it. Hey, listen,
Oh,
we've covered a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
topics on the
yep.
table. Before I wrap up, I know you got a lot of viewers on your podcast. Check my podcast out. Check my website out. I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's really different. It's leehacksawhamilton.com. It's all written. That's how Brian found me. And I also have links to my weekly podcast that I do like he does. So, Brian, good to talk to you. Appreciate the time. I know our
Thanks. We'll
window's been
catch
a
you.
little bit tight
Yeah, we
here, but
got. Yeah,
always a lot
I
of
catch you
topics to talk
soon.
about.
I'll catch you soon. And hey, I'd rather I do my running at the beach or in the city of San Francisco where it's cooler. I'll take the cool weather here in the city before Las Vegas. Hey, you take care, man.
Hey,
Talk to you
Brian, we'll
soon.
talk to you again. All the best to you. Thank you, sir.
All right, that's Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Check him out at leehamilton.com. Brian Professor B. Davis for Satellite Digital Media News Sports Side.